and welcome back to another episode of Journeys from Lagos to Brooklyn. I'm Donatella, one of your hosts, and Bob, and today we have a special guest with us, Mr. Peter Gordon.
Thank you. Nice being here.
Welcome. I think for those of you who didn't get to see our first episode, let's start over with just kind of introducing ourselves to you. Bob, would you like to go first?
No, you go first, Donatella.
Such a gentleman, don't you love it? And I'm an Aries, so you know I love to go first. So my name is Donatella. I'm a technologist by profession, but I have expertise in small business startups, social media branding, cybersecurity. I'm kind of like your all-around everything girl, right?
Yes.
Bob, before our guest goes, would you like to tell us who you are?
My name is Adebayo Ade. Everyone knows me as Bob. Some know me as Joseph. Young entrepreneur. I like to call myself young.
Yeah, I call myself young also.
Here, residing in Brooklyn, doing business in Brooklyn. I feel that I have a social responsibility to uplift our community and both communication and business development. So that's my life's work. So we're into pretty much every facet of that, from fashion to food to music and to now media. So we look to bring good tidings to our people. Passing the mic to my brother Peter here.
Thank you. Sir, my name is Peter Gordon. I am a business owner, entrepreneur. I'm a contractor. I have my own construction business that's now located in the Westchester area. I started that in about 2002 after working about 14 years on Wall Street. And after the World Trade Center
9/11
collapse, I realized that I just needed to go do my own thing.
Now what kind of construction or development do you do?
I do residential construction.
Okay.
I do
Remodeling.
remodeling, renovation. That's mostly what I'm doing now.
I've seen some of your work. I'm trying to buy a house so I can afford to make it.
Thank you. I mean, I do good business. I do good work. I'm very conscientious about what I do. I like what I'm doing. And I think that if you can offer people a good space, that will inspire creativity, that will inspire, motivate, and that's what I'm at.
Off-brand question. How many times have you installed a urinal? I know my next house, I'm going to put one.
A urinal?
Yeah. Okay.
I have never.
We have prostate issues. Like,
No, I know.
It's pretty annoying. If you're not be respectful to your wife and lifting the seat and watch your hair all night long.
But
I've installed a couple of bidets, but never.
That's what I was going to say.
I never have urinal in my next house.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's do it.
That'll be interesting. No one's going to do anything.
I'll read it on YouTube how to install one, and then I'll do it.
I know you're the man for the job. So last week we actually had a wonderful show that no one heard. We had a 2-hour show out here, and unfortunately we had some technical issues that we didn't know how to resolve. But I think today we're good money. We're all set. Everything's working. We got some good lighting. We got
I was going to say,
some sound. So
Actually,
awesome. We're excited.
I'm ready
to redo this thing again. I think the news of the day today, honestly, I thought it was going to be bigger news. I thought Patricia Jean was going after Donald Trump, but they'll have to wait a little while. She actually went after the NRA today for their abuse of and misuse of their 501c3. So I know when you have a non-for-profit, you have to, be very, very open and transparent with how you spend your money and run your organization. And they weren't. They were misusing funds. A lot of money spent on private jets, food, limos, all the things you're not supposed to be using public funds for.
And just wondering if you can remember, because I have to say I'm not familiar with what she did today. Do you remember a number What kind of money?
We're
are
talking
we about?
$70 million.
That's a
Yeah,
lot of
70 million. Because I was thinking about like, what kind of money we talking?
right.
We're talking. So one of the accounts, I think they had a $6 million bill on this black card service. $6 million on black card service.
Well, coming from corporate America, I can say that I understand where. Is that for a year?
For whatever time period this was, I think
It's a lot of money.
It's
Yeah,
a lot
$6
of money.
million is a lot for car service.
A lot of money. But they inflated their salaries.
Okay.
They just made a mess and a mockery of the whole system. And Letitia asked them to disband the NRA. So we'll see how far that goes. Obviously, they're gonna fight back, and they have very, that the Republican lawyers. They're gonna do what they got to do.
Is that similar to when we started talking about defunding the NYPD?
No, disband, like meaning they're gonna
Get rid of them
lose their, yeah,
nationwide.
absolutely. They will not be able to.
And how? I'm just curious because I have a friend who actually, first thing this morning, I heard her completing an application applying for a gun, right?
Okay.
So the NRA regulates guns licenses, right?
I don't think they regulate anything. They just a non-for-profit organization that became powerful as gun lobbyists.
Oh,
But
okay.
they're not. They don't have a position in this government or in
Well,
society.
let's be honest. I mean, the NRA is a Republican, and I don't like to get into
Politics.
party or bipartisan politics, but they are connected, heavily connected to the Republican Party, and part of their existence, the main part of their existence, is to do the Second Amendment. And the Second Amendment, of course, is really not designed for black ownership.
Right.
It's really connected to people who have really inflicted social ills on a certain segment of America, and they know at some point that segment is going to wake up and not go.
Or at least they feel that at some point there's going to be some kind of recognition. So they like to arm themselves to the tilt.
Yeah.
Even their children, their grandmothers, everyone.
As they're old enough to hold a weapon,
Absolutely.
they hold a weapon.
My parents used to, my family base used to be in Denver, Colorado. And back during Columbine, when all of that happened, one of the things that we discussed in our family that in Denver, if you go in and open a bank account, they give you a free ride. Right?
No toasters?
No toasters. You get a free ride.
Speaking of Denver, I don't know, did you all see the video of the 5 black women, a sister with her children, as young as 6 years old? There was a call out that there was a stolen motorcycle, and these sisters were in a minivan or SUV, and they were pulled over by the police
In regards to
at gunpoint, told to exit the vehicle and get on the floor, including
the 6-year-old?
the 6-year-old.
Babies and everything. Yeah.
And this is for a call on a motorcycle. They had the lady on CNN yesterday. I watched it, and Cuomo really did an excellent job just narrating and showing his frustration as a white person in having to answer and feel guilty for what his people are doing.
Yeah,
And at one point, and look, they're really trying to hold up their Blue Lives Matter. They're really trying to support their police. But at what point, it's like you said, like some things you just can't defend.
Yeah, how does a stolen motorcycle
Turn into you laying a 6-year-old out at gunpoint on the floor.
Well, again, that's I don't know how not to keep it real, so that's what we're going to do.
That's what we're gonna do.
Prior to the mid to late 1700s, there was no concept of community policing that existed. The only policing that existed was, believe it or not, the Parks Department. And so when it became evident that the American economy was losing money, now remember what America's first commodity was. And when
Please tell us, for those that don't
for
know.
those who don't know, America's first commodity was slaves,
Right.
free labor.
Mhm.
And so when the abolitionist movement and people like Harry Tubman and Underground Railroad started um, taking away slaves, it was like taking away money
Right.
from the economy, which is why when people say, "Oh, she's going to be on the next $20 bill," Harriet Tubman would never be on American currency because
Right.
her actions were totally counter to the growth of the American economy.
Right.
It became an economic decision to create a force that was multi-jurisdictional, that can go from county to county and bring back the commodity to fuel the free labor system that existed at that time. Okay. Since then, since all these other police departments and law enforcement departments have evolved, not one jurisdiction, not one law enforcement, not one police force has ever denied their racist origins. And so I'm sorry, I didn't cut you. And so when people say, "Oh, the police system, the police force is broken," that's not.
It's working exactly how it's
working
designed.
exactly. Because remember, the 14th Amendment tells us clear as day, neither slavery nor indentured servitude shall be deemed legal in the United States unless duly convicted. And so once you're in prison, slavery is legal.
Right.
And so the free labor system exists behind prison walls, and their job is to staff that. It's not going to. They're not here to protect and serve anything. They are an economic necessity to the elite in this country, and they're doing exactly what they're supposed to.
You know, it's interesting as you were talking about the free labor and where it originated from and how it's working the way it's designed. During our recent pandemic and with all the civil unrest and all the marching, I remember seeing on social media where someone took the symbol that represents NYPD or the police department and they broke down the actual figures, which I never thought about and never paid attention. And it's actually one of the figures is a man holding a whip, which, you know, exemplifies exactly what you're saying.
And the good thing about white America and racist white supremacy is they don't really hide like their symbolism, their logos, their songs, their everything.
They hide in plain sight.
They hide in plain sight. And if you just do a little research, do a little digging, the truth will come out.
Right. Now you don't even have to dig as much. In the last 48 hours, there was an instance, and I believe the state was Ohio, where a gentleman entered a store, said he didn't have a mask, but he had on a Ku Klux Klan hood and wanted to shop. And the salesperson told him that he had to leave, and he refused. He refused to take it off. He's like, "I don't have a mask. This is what I'm using in place of my mask." Yeah, and he literally was attempting to shop with a Ku Klux Klan hood on.
Well, this goes to my point on why I think elections at the local level are very important. And from the results we saw even on Tuesday, progressives in the Democratic Party are like pushing to leave. You know, they're winning. You know, we're seeing the party go more progressive, and I think that's the only way we can have some form of accountability. We have real people, not people that are going to hide behind, not the Jim Clyburns of the world, people that are going to actually go after the issues and try to change them. That's what we're going to change. I mean, we're going to change this in in any way, shape, or form. It's having these people. That's why at some point, you want to vote for the president, that's your business. But on the local level, you have to put just like Letitia James. I voted for her. I voted for these are the people that you have to make sure you get in those positions of power so they do the right thing.
That's true. And since we're speaking about the election, I voted for Letitia James. I also voted for Yvette Clarke. She's another congresswoman that I totally love. But I'm just wondering what your feelings are. I think I saw in the news it was Chris Cuomo was talking about the fact that Joe Biden mentioned 3 months ago that President Trump was going to try to delay the election. And I don't know if you remember, Trump did this whole thing. Why would I delay the election? It's on November 3rd. It's a good day. It's a great day. And now he's actually attempting to do that.
Of course, because he knows the polls are against him. I mean, this guy has tried every trick in the book,
To hijack the president.
and his poll numbers will not improve.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a wonderful thing. You know, they need to stay down because it's just that much harder if he's polling in the 20s for him to somehow miraculously pull off an election victory on the night of.
But how does that help? I mean, how does that help us? When I say us, I mean black people. What are our options? Or do we really feel that one wealthy racist pedophile is going to save us from another wealthy racist pedophile?
Not so much saved, but I think Trump is the worst of the worst.
I disagree.
Tell me why you
I
disagree.
disagree.
I found him to be equally as bad.
Well, we know what he was, right? Well, okay, so we're from New York. We understood, or most of us understood, his personality before that. I'm in construction and development, and so I had dealings with his company. He's an extreme narcissist, okay? And what I found, and I worked for men on Wall Street who were way more narcissistic. Well, no, I can't say that because he's extreme, but much wealthier than he was.
Right, investment bank. You
Sure.
see it a lot.
See it a lot. Short, small, powerful men. And one thing I found about them is if they operate on a very basic system, reward system. If you like me, or if you act like you like me, they really will reward you. Okay? And working for these men without kissing their ass, if I may say that, or without not being able to look at myself in the mirror the next morning, I was able to get anything I wanted from them. Because you must understand, it's a very simplistic model. I think it's a big mistake that we as black voter bloc have taken upon, or our black elected officials have taken upon themselves to snub him going through his inauguration. Oh, he's a racist. He's not. What president have we had that was not racist? Barack Obama was not racist, but his policies, he had racist policies. And that's but that's the name of the game in America.
I understand that part of it, but this is the other side I come, where just look at how his handling of COVID, just as a human being, he does not have the intelligence to deal with an epidemic or pandemic of his scope. You know, his reluctance to act, his denial of facts.
So is America's problem Donald Trump, or is it the fact that a man like Donald Trump could actually win the presidency?
I think it's both.
Well, it's both, because people knew this about him and still voted him in.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. You have to, I didn't like Obama at all, but I knew Obama was going to do his job. And doing his job is putting people in places of authority that are career professionals, that are making sound decisions. When we had hurricanes, we were prepared. When we had, H1N1, Ebola, all these other possible pandemics, Obama was there and had his people stomp on those things.
And not passing out misinformation.
And not
telling
passing,
people to drink
he was
bleach.
an adult in the room. This guy is not. And that's my problem with him, that this guy's just not, he has no business being on that level.
He appealed to the racist sentiment in America. And what I appreciate about him is that we were under the illusion that we were living in a post-racist society.
I don't think we're under the illusion. Too many of us are
Well, we're
dying
not now.
every day.
No, a lot of us were very, very comfortable with the status quo.
No. So I will say we were very comfortable. thinking that most of
We
the
thought it
crimes
was-
that are against us, if you stay out of the hood, you move to Jersey, you move to Long Island. I'm originally from, well, I lived a lot of places, from Maryland. And so, you know, you hear about a lot of things, but I think under this presidency, just the amount of ignorance. For the first time in my life, I talked to a lot of my friends who are outside of the United States, and the jokes that they make about the president, it's
We're
embarrassing.
laughing side.
You
Like
know,
he's a guy that like you run into at a bar. Like
absolutely,
he's that
guy.
dude. He's that guy.
Yeah, but
like
a lot
are you serious? Like security, get this guy out of here.
Yeah, but a lot of those dudes that you run into at the bar, the hedge fund managers, they're CEOs,
Absolutely.
they
There
run,
are no opportunities for us.
they run America, and they're not. One of the reasons I worked in America and get my own business, started my own business, was because I was tired of working with idiots.
Yeah.
Idiots that would. I remember going up into the World Trade Center, working on the 93rd floor, coming back after like a 3-day weekend, right? And folks, white folks that I trained, right, to do their job, they would discuss what they did over the 3-day weekend. Okay? Because
Absolutely.
you got a nice long ride from the
Yeah.
93rd
I
floor.
worked on the 35th floor.
Okay. So they would talk about taking the yacht down to North Carolina, eat crabs, and sail back with the family. Well, what did I do? I took my kids to Chuck E. Cheese.
Right.
Your education isn't better than mine. Your skills and your talents and work more better than and when I trained you, we got to go out to lunch, we had a couple drinks, but we got to know each other. Your daddy didn't have that type of money. So at the time that I trained you until we had this discussion what happened why your income is now triple?
that money.
You're born white, non-black.
Right.
That's
So
what happened.
he actually is the epitome of a class of people, a privilege, a class of people who aren't talented, who aren't smart, who aren't brilliant, who can't.
But isn't that the American dream, though?
For who?
Yeah. Well, I mean, America. I'm American. I have a lot of friends that are from the Caribbean and other places. And one of the things that I hear people say that used to kind of, I think, infuriate me. Oh, I hate America. I hate America. But meanwhile, my whole family is coming because this is the land of opportunity where you can do anything, and that's clear, right?
You believe that? You believe that this is a land where you can do anything?
I think a lot of people can, right? I think the fact that I'm sitting here and I'm talking to you shows that there's an opportunity for a lot. I also think in certain areas where there's not good education, there's not proper food for people to eat. I also understand why people are in the street killing one another. There's an area in Brooklyn called the 90s that I just will not drive through anymore because there's so many bad memories of people that I know who resided there, who died there. For a man of color between the ages of, I would say, 16 and maybe early 30s, you do not want them in the 90s. You just don't. The driving through the 90s, being harassed by the police, or, God forbid, harassed by someone who looks like you. Because that's the other thing when we're talking about, all these other things, bad president. We still have to address at the core that there is a large amount of black on black crime as well.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's how our accountability is an issue. We don't like talking about it, but it's a problem that exists, and I think we don't have any answers on how to solve it. How do we solve these issues that are facing? What is the solution? I think for a long time the church had its grip on the black family.
Right.
And I think after the 60s, 70s, as we started moving out of the church, we lost that grip. And
Or as the church became more like a business.
of course. I mean, and I'm not a Christian, but at the time it did hold families together. We're no longer in those times of So now there's nothing filling that vacuum. So these kids are out doing things at much younger age.
Well, a lot of that has to do with social media as well.
No, listen, I don't need to cut you off.
No.
I don't think the church has ever had a good grip on black families. Let's be clear. The black preacher was allowed to learn to read in order to bring religion to the free labor system. And what religion teaches is being docile, is being complacent. Even the position that you're told to pray on your knees with your hands clasped, it leaves you vulnerable to anything. Like a 5-year-old can live with your ass in that position. What happened was, with the destruction of the black family, was the government realized that people like Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Elijah Muhammad, Martin Luther King were being funded by nuclear families. And so the first order of business, once they realized that funding was coming from these people, first order of business was to do away with the black family. And they systematically did their thing. And the black church has been a part of that breakdown.
But let me explain what I mean. Not to contradict what you're saying, but just give my personal experience. So when we were younger, both my parents were pastors. When we were younger, when we were wake up, 7:00 in the morning, before school and everything, all 8 of us must wait. You gotta get up, get out your bed, come into the living room, open up your hymns, sing our hymns, open up the Bible, take your lesson of the day, and we all had to pray. Same thing, 10:00 at night. All 8 of us had to be there. So there was, if nothing else,
Structure.
you were there at 10:00 at night. Entire family was there. After having dinner, after watching the evening news, you prayed together and you went to bed. Same thing in the morning. You knew where your kids were. It's not this coming in and sneaking out in the middle of the night, 10:00. You don't know where your 15-year-old, your 19-year-old. No, you were still there.
Well, I know parents who didn't go to church and they couldn't be out.
But no, what I'm saying is that Now we modified that. Sam, one of your classmates, when I came back to this country in '88, instead of the Bible, it was Molefite Asante. It was Malcolm X. It was what's his name, Brother Muhammad, the one that passed away, Khalid Muhammad. I was a big fan of it. So we replaced the Bible with reading Black history, and you can do that. This African Black history is so rich. You can literally
reading the Bible is Black history.
It is, but so you can replace that same model. But the problem is that was the glue that held us as kids together, and I think once that was removed, so you say you're not doing that anymore if you don't replace it with something. And the problem is, these families are not replacing it with this conscious knowledge. See, they're not. They've left Christianity. Fine, leave it. But you gotta now.
And it doesn't even have to be conscious knowledge. It could be an entrepreneurial education.
Education. It could be homeschooling. It could be anything. But it was what allowed you to set the structure.
Right.
And because we're not doing that, we're losing. And like you said, even if it was an attack on the nuclear family, they are successful because once that nuclear family has been attacked, we're in shambles. Black men handcuffed by child support. I've seen that destroy so many lives. Your income and just the things that make you break away from your family. First of all, we have to talk about those issues. And now, once you're broken away, now you have to pay child support. So that's another destabilizing.
Child support coming from a single parent home. I think a lot of what happened when you talk about the breaking up of families. I grew up in a home with my brother and myself and my mom. It wasn't until I was 25 last year that I really appreciated the fact that I know that we weren't middle class. So my mother had 3 jobs and she worked on Capitol Hill. I grew up in Maryland. I had a car. I was speaking to a 17-year-old here in New York yesterday who doesn't have a state ID, doesn't have a driver's license, not even thinking about getting a car. I remember growing up in Columbia, Maryland, couldn't wait until you were 15 years, 9 months to get your permit, and then you got a car. And I had to apologize to my mother when I was about 25, and I realized I was a spoiled brat. Like, I've had a car ever since I was the age to drive. And my complaint was, oh, well, Betsy Sue's driving a Porsche. Why am I driving a Renault K? Alliance. They were. I have driven everything. The first car that I drove, I'm trying to embrace my maturity. My mother had a Pacer DL. That was the first car that I drove, and I could fit 14 girls inside that car. But there's also the fact that, a lot of our fathers were not in the home. So how do you have the structure? And then there's the latchkey. My mother has a job. I'm 5 years senior to my brother. I learned to cook when I was really young, which is why now I hate cooking. You learn these responsibilities.
I think the last thing I didn't figure out that there was a war waged against him from a long time ago. And he allowed all these things, these traps that were set for him.
Yeah.
Well, when you say allowed, I mean, okay, so let's go back to that 13th Amendment that made slavery was never abolished. It just transitioned from chattel to penal.
Right.
And so once that caveat was put in the 13th Amendment, the first order of business is, well, how do we get as many ex-slaves? How do we get as many black men into the penal system so they can be legal slaves? And so, if you spat on the street, you get 5 years hard labor. Absolutely. If you walk on the same side of the street as a white man, you can get 10 years. If you look at a white woman, you better be glad you're in jail because you can get swung from a tree.
Right.
And so, based on just that alone, how were we able to escape the pitfalls of what was set before us to get us in that position? Because let's face it, this country is a corporation, okay? A corporation is never going to change their business model if they have gained unprecedented power, unprecedented privilege, and unprecedented wealth. If the system is not broke, why fix it? We're still a free labor-based system. You go to your Whole Foods, you go to your, you go to other businesses that we shop at every day, clothing, and a lot of these their products are being packaged, being produced, being made in prisons.
Right. Speaking of in prison, I found out a couple of years ago that, you used to get a lot of telemarketing calls and they're trying to sell you things and you pay with your credit card. A lot of the telemarketing services are being routed from prison. So that person who probably went to jail for a crime, is now you're giving them your credit card to pay for things. And unfortunately, I went to college in Philadelphia, went to Drexel, and I knew a lot of people who had gotten in trouble and they were getting these astronomical years in jail in Pennsylvania. And it's before I realized the difference between Commonwealth and your regular state and the civil liberties that you have available to you and your rights.
One thing I saw fascinating, I forget where I saw the article, but the young man was on trial. And, what he said was, listen, before we get started, I want you all to try me as a white man.
Oh.
He's like 17-year-old kid. He's like, listen, he said, I've done the research and brought the research.
I read that the other day.
I said, listen, I've done the research. For the same crime that I would commit, if a white man commits the same crime, he gets probation. He's like, so guess what? I want you the same standard of justice y'all give them. I want.
Well, that's because the system is not all about rehabilitation, and it's about for us, it's about labor. For them, they get the regular sentencing because it is about rehabilitation. They
Right.
want
Because they
good.
think they can be rehabilitated.
They want good white citizens, so they give you that opportunity to start your life. As kids, growing up, we are only, and I got to tell you, I felt that boot on my neck growing up, my mother was a strict Christian and games. My father wasn't around. What I mean. But it was still, I found it, and I did. I went to some of the best schools. I did what I was supposed to do. Went to church, but it was oppressive. It was hard to stay away from the system. So you have white kids that will go out there and raise hell, and the DA and the judge and your lawyers will admit, wait, and they come up with terms with how they're functions, they're this, and that. But with us, we're only doing that to
They
sit
get a good
away.
shave. They get a good shave. They shave
Yeah.
off their facial hair.
And
They clean
it's
it up.
it's
and
so funny that you said that. I
they
remember.
do it every time. It's the go-to playbook.
Yeah.
Get a good shave
I
and a
remember
good suit.
with working, you're talking about shaving, and my brother's an African American, and I remember my brother went through a stage when he wanted to wear his hair cut very low, glasses, and a goatee. And I remember, I'm fortunate both my parents are remarried. I remember my stepfather said to my brother at one point, you have to be careful when you interview, because you're sitting across the table as who you are, but with that goatee and those black rim
Malcolm
glasses,
X.
that's exactly what my dad said. They're seeing Malcolm X sit across from them. And
They're petrified.
yeah, my another thing, my brother's gonna probably be up later for sharing all these stories, but I remember one time he called home and he was in a meeting, managers and directors, and everyone's sharing about whatever the topic is, and out of the blue, one of the managers or directors said to my brother, "What's the name of the suit you're wearing?" Because my brother would get suits from my father, who was an executive. And in the middle of the meeting, the manager made a joke that, we must be paying that young man too much.
That's how
because
they think.
He's got on the same suit that I wear.
That's how they think. But we cannot be concerned with how they're going to see us, because as long as we have this, they're always going to see us the same way. I've always gotten good jobs. I've always.
Do you think that's because you're lighter skinned
Absolutely.
and light brown eyes?
Well, it's that, and it's because my features are not threatening. My
Right.
speech is not threatening. But that can work against us in this day and age of when people say, well, I've been stopped before. I got myself in some stuff, but I've never had any problems with the police. People say, oh, it's because you're educated, you're articulate, you know how to talk to them. That'll get you swung from the tree too.
Yeah.
If I don't look at them and try to figure out what their education level is, and I start using words above that, that's
Absolutely.
a problem. I'm uppity. That uppity has gotten more men. Most of the men that were lynched in this country, they weren't your average ignorant, couldn't read person just walking down the street. Some of them were.
You remember when Barack Obama had to mediate a dispute between that lecturer and Boston?
Henry Louis Gates.
And a police officer.
Yeah.
Like,
Because
what we're doing?
yeah. So if you're on a lonely road or and you use a word that this and a lot of these cops aren't educated.
Right.
A lot of them aren't right. Just keep it above.
Very true.
And you start using words, man, that's a problem. So we have to walk this fine line of do's, don'ts, and we're just at a point, I think, that we just can't concern ourselves with that. We just got to be who we are. And I think that once we do that, things will start working.
We have those same, you're making those examples, we have those same issues within our community.
Sure.
I've had conversations with some of my girlfriends, and they'll say to me, that's when you're really condescending. How am I condescending? We're just speaking. No, you're trying to use words to talk over me. And so in our own community, we have the same problems that we're having with the rest of the world. And I feel like if we could address some of our issues in our village, like if we could get each other to respect one another, then other people would look at us and have more respect as well.
The truth is, if you look at the education system, if you're on Facebook a lot or Twitter, you see, one of the things that's fascinating, I'm on all three. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter. Twitter are for the most intelligent of us because you have to write.
You think so? I'm not on.
You have to write. So there's amazing thoughts.
And your limited characters.
So you get the most brilliant pieces in powerful doses.
That's who you follow.
Facebook is your homies, your crew. And then you get to see how people really talk. And if you look at people can't spell their tenses,
Well, people, it's
I mean,
people to
what's
speak
up with
knowledge.
adults?
Angling participle.
Yeah.
So you look at the education, and then Instagram, which is the most popular, strictly for illiterates that don't write. It's all pictures.
My girlfriend tells me I write too much
Look
under my
look at your level of friends, and look on who's where and what.
Okay, I never.
The ones that on Instagram have no interest in writing anything. It's just they just want to show.
Okay.
Show pictures.
visuals.
Ain't gotta write, you know. Not there. Not much up
I'm
there.
only on Facebook. So
Not much up there. And the ones on Facebook, when they do write, you're like, oh man, Jesus Christ. You know. So, but it's a problem about parenting and our school system because they're not being educated properly. And I'm not a proponent of the English language, but if you're in a society that English is the primary language, you need to understand how it's used.
Yes.
And we're not doing this. And if the adults can't read and write, what do you think their children are?
Well, some of the children today that are being educated by smart devices, there are a lot of kids who are much smarter than their parents.
Absolutely.
Much smarter. And especially,
but those are self-motivated. You're always going to have self-motivated. You're always going to find kids in the classroom that are self-motivated and are going to outperform their.
But
The rest of them,
motivated.
the regular kid that needs daddy to, like my son, he's brilliant. But if we don't make him go into his knees, he will not touch a book ever. He will not, unless we make him. And you go and do what he. So you have a lot of kids like that. You have to be there and walk with them. And if you don't walk with them, they're not really going to. You know, they're going to learn what they want to learn. You know.
That's all kids. But I'm speaking more to the people who are giving devices and using them as babysitters, right? And so from a technology background, one of my biggest issues with my friends is that you've got to know what your kids are doing on social media. It's a proven fact now that pedophiles are not out at the playground as much as they used to be, right? They're now creating these accounts and pretending to be children and talking to children. There's cartoons now that have adult content if you're not paying attention. And what's so brilliant about kids, they learn the most between ages 0 to 5. So those bright colors and the things that you see. I know a 2-year-old that lives in the building where I'm staying. And he calls me Auntie Pancake because I make pancakes for 2 mornings. And he comes and he sees me and he says to me, iPad. And I'll get the iPad. He knows how to press in the code, which really bothered me. And he can go to Netflix. He can choose between the adults login and the children's login. Because once you show them once, I think children are like human recorders, right? So if you grow up in a house,
Humans are brilliant.
Yeah.
If we want to do something, we can do anything we want. It's about the desire. If we have a desire if we have a vested interest in that thing, and kids, when it comes to games and technology, they love that stuff. So they're addicts. They'll stay up to 4.
But let's look at what you said, and which is true. The most attention, the most ability to learn and to pick up from 0 to 5.
right?
What age does our academic system start? 6.
Yeah.
So
and those years, who's filling it?
right. So we're not. The system is not designed to produce progress and the best. The system is designed to acclimate us to the system. that that works and benefits only certain students.
And speaking of content, like in the 90s and the 80s, there were ratings. Parents, had more control over what kids were. Now the rating system is gone. These games, they introduce sex and
And
violence
they still
into,
get vicious.
into much younger kids, and they're doing it in a way that kids are enjoying it and they get it, and they're like, wait a minute,
And I think it's desensitizing.
I was engaged. I literally had to ask the guy, okay, is this game okay? Because, I don't want, the kids on TikTok, like, how do you police this stuff?
And you have to have a count. And I had a conversation with a young man in Jamaica last night on live. I just stumbled onto his live. And he has a post on his Instagram where he's introducing his daughter, who looks like she's about 9 or 10, and he's encouraging his followers to follow his daughter on TikTok, right? So I saw it, loved the video, and it just so happened I went on his live later and I said, I love the content between you and your daughter. First of all, there are not enough positive images of
Sure.
Black and brown fathers with their kids, boy or girl. I said, but from a technology standpoint, I just want to make sure that you are addressing the fact that there are people who are pretending to be other people. And so what he said was that he bought his daughter a phone. The promise that they had is that he has access to everything. So every night when she goes to bed, he goes through all of her accounts to see who she's communicating with. And that's his way of policing. And that's more than I see a lot of people. Like, I've had conversations with parents who are like, oh, I'm not on social media. Well, your kid is, right? So you need to be someone in that relationship needs to be.
Well, once again, we're talking about community. The community. We need to start building communities. Communities that support each other, where our kids should be playing with, my kids should be playing with your kids, not people we don't know 17 million miles away. Our kids need to know each other.
And your
That's
kids'
when we
neighbors
were
don't
growing
talk
up.
to each other.
Your parents' friends, their children,
Right.
those were our first friends.
Right. Or if they weren't, you have to bring your friend to the house.
Yes.
And I remember when I went on my first date at 16. And before I could have my first date, I had to introduce my mom to the young man. She had to sit down, have a conversation with his mother.
Absolutely.
And then she took us on our first date to, we went to the movies. It was a double-decker mall.
That's the way it
We
should
walked
be.
upstairs. My mother walked downstairs as we walked around the mall. We went to the movies, and my mother sat in the back of the movie.
We're in a rush to get these kids to be adults. Like, you got the rest of your life to make all those mistakes. At least let them have a pain-free childhood, as pain-free as they can be. You got to do your part. We have to do our part.
Again, is it in a rush to get them to be adults, or is it a rush to get them to be consumers? Is it a rush to get them to make decisions about consumership? This country's all money. The lack of community, the lack of family, it's based on money.
So what do we do to start steering the wheel somewhere else? I don't have children, so it's easy for me to say a whole lot of things. But how do we start the conversation to improve our community?
Well, I think it can't be, an individual thing. It has to be something that we do as a group. And I don't think that, I think that it starts in areas that we don't expect it. If we're looking at this as a household thing. But again, it is a breakdown of social standards, a breakdown of society. We talk about kids, how people have atrocious spelling on social media. Well, it's designed that our academic standards are there. I remember my mother having to, and my mother didn't take me to class. She's 4'11", okay, and she was not intimidated by public school systems, by these principals that had PhD behind their names.
Right.
And unfortunately, she had to remove us. I remember taking 2 buses at 8 to get to school from Town Heights over to Avenue D, Brooklyn, because there were white kids in that school. There's white kids, there's accountability,
Right.
there's a whole bunch of things that we don't have in our school. And she stood up to that. And I remember there were times when if I didn't have the mother that I had, I would have been in special education because I started acting out. Now, looking back in retrospect of why I was acting out is because the teacher was giving me math and science, and I got it. Okay, so when other kids are asking questions or when they're delving in it, I already got it. I'm bored. I'm putting ponytails. I'm in the closet. I'm all over the place, and so I'm not challenged. But not only that, our system for our children is not set up for them to identify talent, to identify intelligence. It gets pegged in a column of behavioral, learning difficulty. No, I got it, but I'm bored. Now, other kids, our counterparts, they will identify a kid and say, okay, he's acting out because let's identify a specialized setting that he can learn, that he can flourish. But with us, we get lumped in it, and next thing you know, we're on Ritalin, we're on medication, we're on cocaine-based Ritalin, and we're on a fast track to penitentiary.
I think throughout time, when I look at it, humanity has always needed. I think that thing a lot of the time has been religion or unifying document on America's Constitution. As Black people, we need a unifying principle or set of principles, which we just don't have. And without that unifying thing,
as American general or Black people?
As Black people, or as diaspora people, we just don't have a unified way of thinking. What is our we have different objectives. What is our ultimate goal? What is our ultimate objective? How do we fix the problems in our community by ourselves without looking for this handouts or break, whatever you call it? What is going to elevate us from where we are in society to where we fantasize all the time? Because now it's trendy to be kings and queens, descendants of. But I always ask you, yes, it's good to have the knowledge of what we were and what we're able to do. But how is that affecting you? How are you using that information to improve your life right now? How are you applying that science, that knowledge, that pride into where you are in life right now? And that's the disconnect. A lot of people love sitting there reading these books and playing gotcha with facts,
Right.
But are living in slums,
Right.
How do you make this knowledge work for you? How do you make it work for your family? How do you make it work for your neighbor? That's what we need to really think of. We have to evolve past the gotcha. We already know the information. We passed the point where, yes, it was hidden. We were deceived, but now it's out in the open. But now we have to move past that.
That's kind of what I feel about social media. So on any given day, you're watching the influencer type accounts repost the same content, and it's getting 500,000 views, and it's got 20,000 comments. But how many times can you post an issue, and then what do you do after? A lot of the not survey, but an online petition to get a law passed to draw attention to it, and I feel like we're just being inundated with so many different things that people don't call 911 on a hold. See someone outside who needs help, I'm not calling 911. Let me take out my camera because I'm now going to take a video, and my video is going to be the one that goes viral. Yeah, and people I know, I'll dial 911, and they're like, Donatella, why don't you just, that's not your business. Leave it alone.
Well, let's understand what social media and the internet is. Social media and internet represents the first time um, in American history that the sons and daughters of slaves have been accessible to truth, to facts, the real history.
I call it the Illuminati. You know, this is the Illuminati we were talking about in the 90s that, you know, the covering of all these secrets, of all this information that we just didn't have access to before. You know, we were fed propaganda and we had nothing to counter it. We couldn't fact check it. What you heard on Channel 7 Evening News was the news,
Sure.
was the facts. And then you find out, wait a minute, these guys been running this game for thousands of years. These guys been lying all this time. These guys are professional liars.
So we're being inundated with a lot, like Donatella said, we're being inundated with a lot of information. However, you know, it's good stuff, and we're jumping on information that fits us, fits our background, fits our understanding, and everybody's getting a different understanding. And so, although it's a good thing, we're being fragmented as a people. We're latching onto this ideology, we're latching onto it, and we have to somehow bring this together. I don't have any answers for that.
I mean, my answer is Pan-Africanism, but, you know, a lot of people are a long way from that. You know, a lot of people don't see. I personally, being from Africa, know the vast land and the vast opportunity that exists in Africa. But I also know that Africa can't fix itself. You know, the people there are just going through the same cycle. Africa needs an outside influence. And I'd rather that outside influence be Black America, be the Black Caribbean. You know, let these folks who understand different things come to Africa with a different mindset and fix Africa. You know, we all
Both sides were
people.
oppressed.
The
oppression view is a little different.
Absolutely.
They use some of the same tactics. If we ever got together, which is, if you ask me, I truly believe that part of this whole pandemic, this COVID thing, is stemmed from the fact that they saw a wave.
They saw that
last year,
absolutely.
2019, the year of return in Ghana.
Look,
They saw something that they did not like.
I'm like
And this, the whole distraction is to disrupt that whole flow.
completely.
It kills it. It has a lot. It has
This
a lot
year
of
was
different.
supposed to be in Nigeria, but it's postponed.
Yeah, exactly. Even myself, I was on my way to Africa until this thing happened.
I went just before, so I was in Nigeria from October. I was in Nigeria from October to December. My first time, and literally flying on the plane to Nigeria, I was blessed where the pilots actually took me into the cockpit. And as we crossed into Nigeria, like 40,000 feet in the air, I was sobbing tears because it was just so amazing. And then seeing people who looked like me on the plane, and for me, and growing up in America, seeing someone in garb, I guess in my head it was more like dress up and not understanding the full level of it. And just sitting on the plane to me, seeing all these people who look like me, and I'm talking to people, and at the same time looking very, very American because I flew to Nigeria in a pair of black running tights. I had a sequins jacket, and I felt so good about myself. And I'm sitting there and I'm talking to these people, and they were like what you would consider your elders, so some of them like 60, 70 years old. And it was just something different about the arch in their back and the way that they walked. It was the most amazing. I would tell anybody, I'm looking at you, you have to go to Africa, and I would say Nigeria specifically because Africa is a huge
Now, what about the black man experiencing that? Somebody standing tall and then starting to stand. What about
and what angers me is this ABOS movement. These people that feel that are being fueled to cause dissent and to separate us as people. And I'm like, you don't get it. You don't get it. They don't want us coming together.
their entire privilege structure, their entire wealth structure is based on what's happening in Chicago. It's us updating each other.
We fit the narrative. We fit the narrative for them when we do that. The minute we say, guess what, we don't need y'all.
It's game
It's
over.
over for them.
Game over.
The minute we say we don't need your Nike, we don't need your Mercedes Benz, we don't need your Rolex. We can do this ourselves. We don't need your NBA. We can go create our own league. But we're just so dependent. And once again, White is right. Like, as long as they're associated with anything we're doing, we'd rather do that. The minute we realize there's a bigger goal, there's a bigger objective in us coming together and doing it our way. It's like Nigeria digging up oil and sending it out to the outside of the country to be refined. And then what back?
Insane.
Yeah.
It's completely retarded.
Insane.
And we have to call ourselves out. This is unacceptable. This is Africa has to stop doing this.
I think I might be wrong, but I saw in the news in the last week where Africa is paying some millions of dollars to white farmers. Did you see that?
They're giving them reparations for the land that was
To
redistributed.
Zimbabwe.
Yeah. But so
And this is something that happened in the last couple of years. And you can't even talk. You don't want to talk about it because it's too embarrassing.
yeah, so interesting enough, I've met quite a few Nigerians that I stay in touch with. And so there was an article that was done in today's Thursday, maybe like on Monday, and all of them were posting the article on social media. And so, one of them called me and he said, I talk about American blacks and how dumb you all are, but guess what? This makes
No,
no
Africa
sense.
can't call American blacks dumb, and we can't
We're
call them
all
dumb.
look,
Yeah.
we are
We're messed
all
up.
the same.
Yeah.
We're better at some things than others. It's
Well, I think we're
all
finally
in the same
over. So I think we're finally over. I'm at the age where I grew up, and I have Nigerian friends that always said, "Oh, Black Americans are lazy," da 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 da. And going to Nigeria, I understood why they said that. The level of poverty that's in Nigeria for those who are poor is something
but here's my
unimaginable.
issue. As a Nigerian, we do not appreciate the history of the black man's experience outside of Africa. And we need to do a better job of learning that history
Right.
before we open our mouth and start saying.
Is there anti-African American sentiment? in
There's no
Nigeria?
anti-African American. What you have is a lack of knowledge, a lack of understanding of the struggle, of the civil rights movement. They have no idea what the black man went through for the last 400 years. Many of them don't even know what slavery existed.
The ones
Many of
that
them.
so
So it's that controlling the knowledge, controlling the narrative, which we haven't controlled. In the textbooks, the way they whitewash history, they don't tell you that we were alligator bait. They don't tell you how people were stuffed on ships and millions died in the ocean. They don't tell you any of that. They don't tell you the brutal reality of slavery.
But let's face it, bro. Our education here is garbage.
Everywhere.
Because of the group, like
Same guys right in the books.
If what would happen if you told little black children that the divine sciences exist, chemistry,
right.
all the ology, geology, that's how your ancestors created that. We grew up thinking, "Oh, I'm not good at that. Oh, I'm not good at it." If we were told the truth and these kids were able to form a direct connection to these
They can
sciences,
visualize themselves somewhere other than a
Even a
basketball
master.
player, a football player,
And
a rapper.
that's why homeschooling is on the rise. That's why more and more taking more active roles in our children's education. But you see, when we get these, like the NFL is donating $300 million to the black community, where's that money going? Are they going to the same old organizations that have squandered and wasted with European ideas? Or are they going to reach out to new schools of thought?
real grassroots.
Real
powerful,
grassroots.
yeah, no, they're not. They'll never reach.
And the question is, how do we have these grassroots? How do we build them up to be able to have access to that kind of money? Because 300 million is a lot of money.
Yeah.
That can change the world.
Yeah.
If put to the right
Put to the
uses.
right resources.
You know? So these are questions we gotta ask ourselves. But listen, if you're enjoying our show, like it, share it. We're gonna be here on Thursdays. We'll do a better job of promoting the show and letting you know exactly what time to find us. We're all very busy entrepreneurs. We're definitely gonna have you here as often as he wants to be here.
That's great.
You know, there's no show with Donatella, and you know, I'm here to shock that.
This is exciting. So I think we're wrapping
stuff.
up for the day. And since you are a guest, I'm just wondering, is there anything you'd like to leave us with, a parting word? How can people reach out to you? I'm sure we're coming out of the pandemic. There's lots of people who work in construction who are looking for employment. Is there any
Well,
contact?
I had also started a trading. I came from Wall Street, opened up my business, but in my last construction project, my head carpenter and I was also an ex-Wall Street man, really good. We have devised a trading system that we are teaching to our people, sort of a force of reparations type situation. And we know it works. We've even came up with a software that works in conjunction with our strategy, and it has a very high rate of success. We know it works, and then we're trying to figure out how do we convince our people, because when you bring something good to our people, the biggest.
That's not a pyramid or a sushi.
Oh no, it's not. No,
And
no,
if they
it's
listen to
Bring 500, bring
Right.
2,500 next week.
right. It's an investment strategy.
You're not selling
It's
anything.
an investment strategy. Your own knowledge. You get to see everything. You get to trade. You get to learn. And so we're saying, but yeah, we know it's good for our people. How do we get to convince them that it's good for them? And then pandemic happened.
We got that
Right.
man.
Right. Well, that was that was part of our thought process.
I already in my head was saying an
Right.
influencer.
We know. Listen, we know how people are.
Right. But here's the thing. Once the quarantine happened, then it becomes a necessity for people to earn at home.
Right.
And so now we're being inundated with people, which is a great thing. But we just want to make sure that everything is, we do everything, we bring it to the masses under the right way, make sure we conform to all the SEC rules.
Right.
So I want to put that out there, and I just want to say we just gotta love each other.
It's a great point that you put that, because if you look at society, the people of color in this country are the workforce.
Yeah.
White folks trade stocks, invest, they're at home. They're on the golf course.
Yeah.
You're doing the work for them.
You're doing the work for them, and they're freeing up their intellectual property and their creativity to go now use that money to do
To
other
find more,
things.
exactly. To find more investment.
We have been taught that this is above us, this is intimidating, and I'm here to let you know it is not. It's like going to Atlantic City. Don't let them let you think that it's anything more than gambling.
It is
Right.
legalized gambling. It's
Right.
legal.
But if you can share knowledge and if you can come up with systems that then you can minimize the gambling process.
And also, you do your due diligence. You read up on about all companies and whatever you can. Make sure that they're doing good business. They're not fly-by-night corporations. And that's, things like Zoom and all the things that are taken off. It's just a matter of information. You have the information and the foresight to see, well, this is going to work in the society right now.
Right.
And applying and having access to go in. I know when I was trading stocks years ago, I needed a network because it's very stressful. You're a day trader, you're doing it by yourself. Your group, your phone, your blood pressure's through the roof. So you need people to kind of talk each other, simmer you down, and that's great that you have a network, and without using forums.
There's nothing, all the social ills that we just discussed, there's nothing gonna happen good for us unless we don't get everybody else together. That's it for me.
Thank you very much. There's one last thing. Oh, If you have not seen Beyonce's Black History,
Oh, I know. I haven't seen it on Disney.
She's getting a lot of heat from our people on that, though.
Yeah.
All I'm hearing is
don't you expect me?
yeah, that means it's good. That means it's
There
good
you
for us.
go.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm gonna
There
check it
you
out.
go. You have the
I-
Black
I-
Christians
I've heard-
that have a problem with her embracing her African,
Yeah, I've heard
heritage.
they've said
Right.
some
And you
incidents
have the
about-
Africans, Christians, same thing. Or Africans.
But even the
that are not.
conscious community is like killing her right now because they can't decide if the horns is from Baphomet or
Yeah,
you know.
and she was God for the kid.
Yeah.
Those are people that just want to kill to kill. Those are people that
Yeah.
just want to kill.
And
Like I
because
said, they're
it's
people.
a thing.
You know, you have Beyonce borrowed heavily from Yoruba culture. She also used a lot of the names, and she used some South African. If you're not represented in one of those three cultures, you might feel a little bit left out. You know, of the whole. But it's not her fault. I mean, if she's practicing Ifa, Yoruba, that's what she's into. So she's only going to put out what she's into. You can't blame her or criticize her. That's what she considers African.
You have to stop being so critical of each other.
And that goes back to what I said before. We're not supporting.
Look at the credits. She employed thousands of people that look like her. 15 directors. She did her thing. She went on the continent. She took her kids. She showed you this is her life. This is not just some fly-by-night project. This is where she wants you to believe in that thing in you because it's right and it's real.
We gotta love that.
How can you not love that? And our people take that and pontificate about it.
Well, let's
So,
talk about it. I want to have a chance to see it.
please go see
And
it.
then next week
If you need the Disney, I got it. I'll give you my password. You go check it out. I got no problem. But spend $6 to go get it.
I will. So thank you again for joining us this week on our journey from Lagos to Brooklyn, and we look forward to seeing you next week on our next episode.
Don't forget to shout out the man behind the mirror.
Oh yes,
Nas,
thank you,
our
Nas,
producer
our
director,
producer
making it all
director,
go.
who fixed the sound this week. Ah! So,
This was good.
thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Yay, I'm hungry now.
Sure. Tell them what you want to eat.
Good show. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, Bob. I
Crazy
appreciate that, man.
I love this.
Thank you. This is gonna be a
That's all we
start.
gotta do. I said, listen, that's why I didn't want to talk.
Thank you.
I don't like talking about stuff, man. We just gotta do it. You know, we talk. We just gotta do
I
it.
got a big mouth. Anywhere I can.
No, you
And
got
Shoot
the
it
world,
all.
and the world
to
needs
make
to-
me read.
It's all right. You have to like.
Where's all my stuff?
How's it sound?
That's all right.
Thank you.
That's all right. Yeah. Because the place is too open. You know.
What? It wasn't nice?
It was good. Like you can hear everything.
We'll work on it.